And away we go. This is how
Awesome.
we're going to start. So, this is Warlocker Call with Pontus.
Hello.
Hello. From DreamHack. And so we just met up out of the blue. I hit him up on Twitter, and we met up at GDC. We're taking a break from the convention hall. And so, I mean, with DreamHack being one of the bigger names in esports, I had to get someone to talk about it. So it was great reaching out to you, and you're super exciting to listen to or be able to do this opportunity. And I'm grateful for you doing that, since you're not getting paid. I'm not going to give you any sweet insider deals on what Wargaming's doing. Sorry.
Oh no, I was counting on that. Okay.
I do know there are some sweets who take World of Tanks very seriously. So.
Absolutely, and warships too.
And warships. Okay, that's good to know. So we'll just start off real quick. Who's your team? Who's the team that you cheer for across most esports, or if there's a specific game that you cheer for?
I mean, it has to be either Ninjas in Pajamas or Fnatic, right?
Of course.
I mean, they have been with the Swedish scene in multiple different games for the longest of times. They're also one of those teams that's actually world-renowned, and people actually knew who they are, so it's easier to talk about them while, telling someone how much I like those games and players in those games. So
now, what games do you actually follow?
This is the thing, working with sports and esports and that sort of stuff. I mean, of course I follow a lot of the competitive scene. I think the only thing I'm following really, really strongly right now, or very much, is actually Heroes of the Storm.
Me too. That's amazing. I'm so happy you said that. That's super exciting.
I mean, the Western Clash and the HTC going on right now. I mean, I'm stoked about all of these things, even though I'm traveling here and couldn't follow all of the action that happened. I'm going to try to catch up on all the VODs when I travel back. So.
If you want to watch something later, we can just pull up Twitch somewhere and we can watch some of the VODs of even the Eastern Clash. Because that was going on, and I'm like, there's so much stuff already going on. I can't do that right now, but I'll go back and watch those VODs.
I mean, and what really captivates me surrounding all of the Heroes of the Storm stuff right now is that we're actually seeing, the community being built from the ground up.
Yeah.
We're grinding, we're going that, extra mile to make sure that, it really grows from the grassroots through the mid-tier. Now it having all of these, high-tier competitions. So, I mean, for me, it's something special about just seeing it grow.
Absolutely.
And seeing the community, get along and just see this competitive side of things.
Yeah, and it reminds me, just with kind of limited teams that are in the pro circuit, it just makes me think of Counter-Strike 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And it's just okay, but now we have a studio actually supporting it and creating the infrastructure behind it, and working with partners like DreamHack, who are just already very experienced in setting up that esports atmosphere and that expectation that everyone else has come to from all the other experiences. So it's going to be interesting seeing Heroes of the Storm, because it's not like a tier 1 esport. It doesn't have all the dedicated fans like the Overwatch League, and its player base considerably smaller. I mean, that's just
sure.
At the same time, with that smaller, more inclusive community, you're going to be getting some more of those diehard fans. And I think you're going to, once more companies and sponsors start picking up teams, you'll start seeing a lot more interest come into Heroes of the Storm. So I'm super excited to see where it goes.
I completely agree. And of course, us running our DreamHack Masters arena-style events in CSGO and that sort of stuff, of course I love, the biggest, badassiest moments of esports too.
Yeah.
Having 20,000+ people in the arena watching this sort of stuff. I mean, all that sort of kind of atmosphere is, of course, also golden. But I think for me, as you were telling me, just watching, being able to observe this growth, building something from the foundation up. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. So now you work at DreamHack as a business analyst, or a business intelligence analyst and live operator, right?
Yeah.
So maybe tell us a little bit more of what that's like, coming from kind of the production side as you're putting on all these events. What kind of data are you diving into, or is that part of your gig?
Yes, exactly. So, I mean, I've been at DreamHack doing all sorts of stuff, running tournaments, to organizing game jams, to being straight up a business dev, working out new cool ways for our partners, sponsors, publishers to get engaged with our brand.
Yeah.
But at the moment, as you were telling me, I'm working more on the data side of things.
Okay.
So, what that's incorporate is mostly, looking at our not only online audience. We're talking a lot about viewership and the 500 million viewers we had 2017 across all the productions we did.
That is insane.
That is insane. So like getting to know who are they, what do they do, what are the interests? Are they interesting overlapping?
Yeah.
Like, because here's the nice thing about DreamHack, and this is why I really love DreamHack and the whole community behind DreamHack, because we're not just one game community.
Right. You're every game.
Yeah, we're actually an umbrella for several game communities. So I get to talk to all the game communities out there. Like, doesn't matter if it's a Blizzard, Wargaming, or any other. Like, we have them all.
Yeah.
And we work with them all.
And that data set is probably extremely valuable. I mean, with Blizzard, with Wargaming, with Blizzard is 4 or 5 different games, so it's just like the amount of data that you can kind of assess based off of your customer, your viewer, and trying to figure out how you can kind of cross-pollinate those groups. I imagine that's really interesting to dive into and trying to solve that problem.
Exactly. And like, it doesn't all come down to just, knowing where someone are from and that sort of stuff. It's also, going into how we develop and actually improve our broadcasts on different side of things. I mean, if we find some kind of component to really work for one type of community during a certain tournament setup, then we suddenly have the data on that to actually try that out in other communities too.
Right.
And then suddenly you end up with this, oh shit, we never thought about this. We never thought that we could organize, a CSGO tournament, a Dota 2 tournament in this fashion,
right.
and the community just love it because we have that insight.
Yeah.
And that's quite unique for us.
That's really cool. And I mean, you guys are like one of the few that actually have that data. So I mean, outside of like IEM and like ESL, you guys and MLG, but you guys are, I mean, I struggle to name another group that might even be acting on that same level. So how do you guys make sure that you stay on the top, at the forefront of production value, making sure you're reaching the right audience? Like, is there how much effort is going into like R&D and that kind of stuff from your perspective?
So I mean, we put a lot of time into R&D. I mean, we do. I mean, everything that people are not actually seeing from a broadcast perspective, like what kind of hardware, software, stage equipment is actually making this presence, possible.
Right.
All of those stuff we develop at DreamHack. So we do have, people experimenting with the latest of tech when it comes to live broadcasting. We try to integrate that with everything from Twitch to any other distribution platform like Facebook, Twitter. We do so many things to try to kind of, I know it sounds so weird, but fail fast,
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing that. I love hearing companies doing that because it means you're doing it right. You're going to find a whole bunch of stuff that doesn't work, but each time you're going to learn at least a little bit. And I mean, from an audience perspective, that's going to be the most important bit for building esports, is understanding the audience, especially because you guys aren't making the game, so you have to think about it from the other side, which, I mean, it's logical to think that you guys are putting in as much effort as the developers are for making a good experience. So I mean, that's I'm kind of nerding out a little bit with you right now. This is just like,
No, but I totally understand like the angle you're trying to get at, and I mean, this is also as you were telling us, like we do not actually make the game, so we are still at the mercy of the developers. But
Sure.
We have some of the insights and some of the knowledge that very, very, very few developers have.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this symbiotic relationship that we need to create and need to maintain. That's basically what I'm here.
Yeah.
Like, why go to the game developers conference,
Yeah.
It doesn't make a perfect fit, but for us, we need to be here. We need to talk to the devs. We need to be able to communicate. Like, DreamHack, we do esports, we do broadcast, etc., etc. Do you need help with the competitive side of your gaming, then ask us. But we're also here talking about DreamHack as an event series going around the globe.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting because you also have this three-way relationship, because you are putting on like the live production value.
Sure.
But then you're also working with platforms like Twitch and MLG to get your events on there. And so there's a bit of a customer service and partnership there. But then you still also have to work with the game developer to be like, what are you expecting? What's your target for this event? And you guys have a lot of customer service that you also have to adhere to, which I imagine can be a bit tricky, considering you guys have a full calendar every year. And then knowing that you still also have to iterate on things behind the scenes and then event to event. Walk around.
Yeah.
I think we're going to avoid the waterfall.
Yeah, otherwise no one's going to hear anything we're talking about. No, but I completely agree with what you're saying. I think it's also important to say, like, you're talking about tournaments and kind of tournament setups and how we collaborate on that. I mean, one thing that makes DreamHack also unique is the fact that we are running our own tournaments at live events, which we are ourselves organizing and setting up. So DreamHack is quite large these days. We have like 250,000 actual visitors to our event, and we have 11 events across 6 different countries.
Wow.
So, I mean, I love talking esport, but I think it's also important to understand what makes the esport work.
Absolutely.
And that's actually going back to the Heroes of the Storm kind of discussion. Is actually we try to make sure that the communities in these different games are able to meet up and grow, to create that kind of social experience, to be able to, if you want to watch, I mean, it's okay if you want to watch, a live esport action, like that sort of stuff, but you also want to play the game together with your friends and that sort of, so we're kind of offering all of that, and not only, let's head for that event and watch it and then go home, like, head to this event, play together, watch it, go back, learn, develop your expertise, compete in our tournaments. We're trying to go into all of these things.
That's fantastic. Now, tell us a little bit about what you do and how you got into that.
Sure. I mean, as I said before, like, I work almost exclusively with the data side these days, looking into how to improve not only the esports side of things, but also event things. But I actually got into this through the game track, so to speak. I started at DreamHack organizing different game jams and actually picking up on the indie side of stuff, because DreamHack is more than esports. I think I'm going to repeat it several times, because I think a lot of people think DreamHack is only esports.
Yeah.
So we're kind of creating the gaming lifestyle brand. That's basically what we're trying to do, and that includes not only esports but also indies, free to play, bring your own computer, like everything, because we want to be that celebration for gamers, but also be a world leading esport production company.
That's fantastic. I mean, every time you guys do a event, I always see the bring your own computer section and the pictures that come from it, which look like insane amounts of fun. But I had never thought of that as part of your brand as more. I thought that might have just been like an opportunity for socializing, but not necessarily something that you were putting a good emphasis behind. And hearing that you're also doing like game jams and stuff to support the indie, it's like that community outreach just locally even. That's really cool to hear. Now, is there, with the bring your own computer stuff, now I'm curious, like, how are you emphasizing that as part of a lifestyle?
I mean, it all comes down to like what actually got DreamHack to become DreamHack from the start.
Okay.
We started off in a school cafeteria in a small town in Sweden because people wanted to come together and just be able to play. It was back in the days. It was 1994.
Yeah.
You know, internet speeds were nowhere to be seen. There was no other possibility for except a very few people to actually play it together.
Right.
If you didn't bring your computer together.
Yeah.
And networked. So that was the whole setup back then. And we are kind of taking that back and keep improving on that format because we think that a lot of the gaming stuff we see is a lot about experiences, you know, go and watch this, go and look at this, go and, you know, like doing that sort of stuff, while we want to kind of take a step back and, you know, let's do stuff together. Let's participate. Let's play together. Let's do stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main point right now, and the main kind of angle of approach we want to have, because we're kind of seeing this change in the industry where people are looking towards getting, you know, a broadcasted message. We just want to have a social experience,
yeah.
You know, like it was back in the days with arcades, with, you know,
yeah.
bring your own like how can we make that a more modern format, and that's what we're trying to create.
That's the first time I've ever heard anyone trying to relate your events or even the Twitch experience to going back to those old school LAN parties or the arcade. And that, I mean, that's such an evocative image of bringing gaming from arcades in the 80s to giant celebrations. But thinking of an arcade at that scale just doesn't work. But so now you've redefined that image of a social gathering, and it's different than PAX. It's different than GDC. It's got that level of electricity and fandom and just fanaticism about what people are passionate about. That's really
that's actually what it all comes down. We want to make another way for people to just share the passion for gaming. It doesn't, you know, it could be tabletop, it could be cosplay, it could be anything. We want to be kind of the platform for anyone to kind of meet up and just be, you know, nerdy about stuff in a way that it's not, you know, walk in and sit down in rows and rows of ballroom chairs, you know, listen to someone on a stage, because that's what everyone else is doing, and that's not really interacting with other people. That's like watching it, you know. I could do that at home watching YouTube. Like when I go to events, I want to meet people, I want to do stuff together, and that's why I'm circling back to kind of this lifestyle choice,
Sure.
Lifestyle gaming kind of event style we want to go for.
Okay, now the important question: when am I going to see a DreamHack Seattle?
I'm not sure when that's gonna happen. But what I do know and I can tell you is that our DreamHack office in the States is actually located outside Seattle, so we are already present there.
Interesting. Okay, that's... How long have you guys been in Seattle?
2 years.
Really?
Yes.
You guys are flying under the radar there.
Yes, we are flying under the radar at a lot of places, and we have kind of done this kind of soft launch here in the States. And with a soft launch, a lot of people know already about us, and a lot of people, you know, we're not doing big marketing. We're not doing that sort of stuff because, you know, as I keep circling back to, like, we want to be kind of the lifestyle, like people we don't want people to go there because they fear something else that they shouldn't be doing or stuff like. We genuinely want people to have this, need or creed of going there.
You want people to seek you out, and you don't want to be loud in everyone's face, because if it's your lifestyle, you're just going to magnetize to it anyways.
Exactly, and I mean that's kind of what differentiates us. DreamHack is 20 years old, and that's for a reason, right?
Yeah.
And that's not because we bring out the megaphone and start screaming like any VC-backed company can do.
Right.
Like, we just, we are the cool ones that are not taking the spotlight because we know we do not need to do that.
Yeah. When you say something, it's going to carry weight.
Yes.
I love that approach. That is exactly the kind of approach I would appreciate from someone who really truly is trying to understand, or already understanding their audience, and trying to build so much out of that. Now, how did you get into managing data?
I mean, that basically comes from my own personal interest into data. I mean, data for me is like seeing the world for what it truly is.
Yeah.
A lot of people are doing a lot of within the gaming industry just on a hunch. And I mean, some really successful people have a really nice hunch, but a lot of people do not. So we see a lot of, not only bad, but not optimized choices through it. And that's kind of what got me into data. So the other thing that kind of co-aligned or really made me possible to start working with this is the other thing that, before this, esports and gaming and broadcasting, that has kind of been, it's a nice addition. Mm-hmm. But right now we see a huge change where, for instance, DreamHack is nowadays owned by MTG, Modern Times Group, which is one of the biggest production and media companies in the Nordics. And they usually do traditional TV or linear TV, and when you have those kind of forces entering here, that opens up for a lot of, okay, are we actually doing this the right way, or should we do something in a different way?
Yeah.
And how can we take that knowledge that the TV and broadcasting companies have been accumulated for like 50 years now, and apply that to gaming, which we love, to make sure that it grow even faster,
right?
So even more people can appreciate it for what it is. And I think that's kind of actually the bottom line what got me into this sort of data centric position at DreamHack.
And I love the idea that you're using data to establish the behavior of people, because I'm coming from more of a management side in my experience, either through a feature as a producer or as a QA lead managing a small team. And it was throughout my management experience, it's always been don't measure or give feedback based off of my intuition and my perception. It's about giving experience on the behavior, giving feedback on the behavior of an individual, or feedback on how I'm interacting with a specific feature, because it's a behavior. That is what happened. That is a source of truth, just like your data. And now with the volume of data that you're dealing with, you're talking about behaviors of hundreds of thousands of people. So if you're not emphasizing the behavior that's already there, you're pushing back against what everyone else is expecting or already doing, and you're going to be a fish swimming upstream trying to make either change, and maybe it's a good change to try, but I don't think you can expect success or a whole lot of movement on that. But that's why you do the little dialing of tweaks and here and there, and you're testing sample groups of how they react to stuff, and you're starting to read that behavior at a mass level. And so that really resonates with me, and hopefully that's something that people can bring back to their day-to-day, is measure the behavior, not your perception or your expectation from your perception.
I completely agree, but one thing that you always have to kind of because it's always a double-edged sword. You don't want to end up in this complete circle of just incremental improvement on a concept you think is the best concept. And that's where I think we also at DreamHack is kind of making some real differences from others, because we also just want to, we're trying out some weird stuff.
Sure.
Like we're trying, and there is no data initially backing it up, and that's actually a good thing, because suddenly we might find a concept we otherwise would never have found if we only keep on incremental improving something.
And there is nothing wrong with trying something weird, because you're learning something.
Exactly.
But the idea, like we talked about earlier, is failing fast.
Exactly.
You want to get the data as quickly as possible so that you can find if there's anything of value or if it's a dead end. You can fail that quickly. You've only lost a little bit of time, maybe a little bit of money, and a little bit of quality on maybe another feature or process that you're looking at, but you started that weird experimentation understanding the risks, and you've probably already done your investigation of what it's going to cost to do this, so it was already something that you were expecting to some degree, a little bit of risk management. Now, thinking about how you do so many events from in different countries and to different scales, where sometimes or most of the time there's multiple games being treated at the same time, I would have a hard time imagining a live ops for one event where you're managing all the cameras, all the volumes, and all the other hardware that the players are working with. But how massive and chaotic is it behind the scenes when you're managing multiple of those broadcasts?
I mean, actually, since, and this is another thing that I think is quite unique with us, is that we have had time to learn what works and does not work. And we have now ended up with a system we're working internally that's actually able to scale quite good, if I could say so myself. Because what we can do now is kind of add to more production teams working out of, a framework we've set up, and then you can just boot up another esport event and an esport title at an event. So it's actually not as chaotic as it was a couple of years ago. I mean, we started doing esports stuff back in 2008, 2009. I mean,
that's true. You have a lot of experience doing this now.
And I mean, back then we didn't have all these fancy solutions that we have today. I mean, a lot of the hardware that we're using today, like you could listen in on some of the hardware discussions here at GDC for developers. Like, there wasn't stuff back when we started off. We had to invent it ourselves. So, like player in picture stuff or video in picture stuff and all that sort of stuff. I mean, all of those things were integrated into huge system used by television companies around the globe. So we actually just okay, let's go for this open source project over here and start building on that. And we have had 5 years to build, our stack on top of open source. It's not open source today, the stuff we do, but I mean, we had to, because there was no one else doing this.
Right.
Or the people that was doing this. I mean, of course, we are not the only actors. The other guys doing it, they did it in a way that we didn't feel comfortable with doing. So in order to add stuff like switching player perspective during a broadcast, and doing that without having to add 20 people, flipping a switch somewhere, that requires you to actually have some kind of ingenuity. And I know that for a super short example of stuff we've done and what people think enjoy, why we can do all this stuff and why we really enjoy owning the whole process, is, for example, our CSGO broadcast. I mean, when people have been sitting and watching in the live audience, we always get Reddit comments on how good the sound is in game and on the stage from the in game, and people are like, what version of CSGO are you actually running on, because the sound is so good. And in reality, we actually modify the sounds coming out from the game to make it fit the live audience in a way that, you know, it's more oomph from the bass, and it's more, you know, so it comes down to our knowledge and expertise into both the software and hardware, so we can actually make it more of a, you know, attractive stuff to actually experience.
That's super exciting to hear how much of the experience is tailored to that live audience, but then you know what you're going to get when you're watching from the stream perspective as well. That is super attentive. That's yep.
So I mean, all of those things, these are the stuff that we have and stuff we are building on, and I think that's what makes it so great to work at DreamHack, because we got this stuff set and we keep on innovating in these stuff. So
yeah, and so esports kind of branched out of traditional sports, being like, we want to have teams and organized competitions much like traditional sports, and it's kind of gone its own way, and now it's kind of running parallel to traditional sports, but there's still a lot to learn from the long history that traditional sports have had. How much have you guys leveraged from like the iteration of spectating from like early basketball or football and proper European football, and watching as that grows? How much have you guys been paying attention how that spectator?
I mean, of course we have paid a lot of like into that, because I mean, when we do stuff like, maybe now you can find live operators and camera operators that can solely say they have been working within esports, so they know how esports work. But back in the days when we started off, you know, we had to get that kind of knowledge and experience in from the traditional sports side, right? Because, you know, we were not going to start off at absolute zero bottom. We still wanted to know and we still wanted to get to understand how production works. So we got that from traditional sports, and we keep borrowing some stuff from traditional sports, like how a broadcast is kind of set up in a way, you know, format-wise, like with the segments, analytics desk, and those sort of stuff, because people expect at least some familiarity with being familiar with some stuff from other things you are watching, so you're not completely off when it comes to an esport broadcast. But other than that, I mean, there's so much fundamental difference between esports and traditional sports, like the fact that, you know, a traditional, like a European soccer / football match is 90 minutes and then maybe adding a few minutes, like it's time based, whereas CSGO, for example, is round based and map based. So I mean, it's completely different back end how to organize that sort of setup. So
yeah, and I mean, Heroes of the Storm, you're seeing best of 5s and best of 7s, and when it goes to that game 7, you know you are hitting your max time.
Yes. And
I mean, and the production of the HGC has gotten a lot better since it began, but you're still looking at a 15 to 25 typically minute match, 5-minute break, and then another 5-minute match, and I mean, that goes on for such a long duration that I see that as a potential situation that esports is going to have to kind of grow into, about refining the time that it takes to watch one of these events. Because, I mean, the CSGO tournaments, those things are all day, every day for like a week. And Dota 2 with like the international, that is a week long for groups and playoffs, and then like 3 days for the grand finals and the finals and quarterfinals and everything. Like, the amount of time it takes for a spectator to get to invest to watching a full event, it's like watching the Olympics for the entire time it's on TV.
Sure.
Is there any concern about the duration of esports against what people's attention may be for like the traditional sports?
I mean, yes and no. Of course, like everything else is going towards, everything should have shorter attention spans, and content should be shorter, faster. That's just something that the society, like on a general level, is actually going towards. So of course we always look at how big or how long should we do different segments and that sort of stuff. Then again, what really gets like traditional sports people or broadcasting sports people off is the fact that the general esport viewer is watching content for like an hour and a half straight, like in the same session, and that's completely, that's 10-20 times the amount of time that a normal sport fan is watching a traditional sports broadcast. So I mean, talking about, everything has to become shorter, sure. Then again, the esport fan is actually watching stuff for longer periods of time than you might expect. So
interesting. I mean, I saw a statistic that came out for about I think it was a 6-day period from the Esports Observer. There was something like 26.5 million hours of Fortnite alone consumed like last week.
Yes.
And then just underneath that, it was League of Legends at like 19 point some million hours, and underneath was PUBG, and it's just the number of hours and the number of people to generate those hours is insane. So you can't expect that a single person is only watching 20 minutes to get those kind of numbers.
Sure.
And that's 26.5 million hours in 6 days.
Yeah.
There's only 24 hours in a day.
I'm not arguing against you on that. I mean, I find it fantastic, and then again, well, you have to kind of think of what's incorporated into that number. I mean, what do they consider esport and that sort of stuff? But in general, I mean, it's awesome, and I think that for us going into this, Our take is also that we want to keep, not just going for all. I mean, it's fantastic to hear about Fortnite or PlayerUnknown or all these huge games that just pops up from nowhere. But we also want to continue doing content and are continue doing content for a lot of other games. So, as I kind of mentioned before, I mean, the DreamHack community is several communities under the same umbrella. So I mean, we love the fact that certain games are getting this up spiral super duper, and of course that's amazing, doing awesome production for that. But we're gonna continue doing stuff and kind of go for the FGC approach and everything. That hey, we're here for the long run,
Yeah, and I mean, games like PUBG and Fortnite also have to be a little bit concerning because, like, they're super popular right now, but where are they going to be in 10 years?
Sure.
Like, Counter-Strike is, early 2000s?
Yes.
And so, an 18-year-old game, yes, you're going to support that, especially with the numbers that it's generating and probably still increasing in terms of viewership. Of course you're going to support that. It is proven to stand the test of time. League of Legends getting there. It's like 8 years old. And Dota 2 right there alongside it. And so you got those games that have established that longevity, and it's just like, there's your core audience, and you have to hedge your bets against where Fortnite's going to be. Maybe Vainglory going 5v5 on mobile is going to be a huge deal, but you won't know for another 24 months to see how the community accepts it, how they're building on, how Super Evil Mega Corporation is building up off of it, how the community adapts to it. And so I imagine there's got to be some amount of patience and frustration waiting for these games to prove themselves.
I mean, yes and no. I mean, for us, I think the most frustrating part is basically like, does the game actually have the necessary components and features built in which are required for us to actually make something out of it?
Yeah,
that's actually the most and the most frustrating part of things. And I think that's also partially why I want to be kind of here at GDC, like listening in on how people talk about this sort of stuff, because I think in most cases, spectator mode is built in the last month of the, because they're like, oh shit, we should have a spectator stuff in this game. And in some games, we don't even have spectator mode, like in Fortnite. Yeah, it doesn't even have that yet. So I mean, a lot of devs, are looking towards, the esports side is kind of taking the second priority on all the lists. So I mean, I want to be here and kind of be the evangelist in terms of like, yeah, you should really look at making the competitive side of your game actually considered key features and key content for your game, because that's going to end up paying you back in the long run if you manage to grow your community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did you see Amazon's announcement on Monday about their Game On service?
Yes.
That's got to be super exciting too, because now every little indie game that's out there has an opportunity to run some sort of in-game tournament, maybe not necessarily an esports formatted, formal teams, formal structure, but you could easily see that extension. And so now this little mobile game that may not have had any attention suddenly skyrockets like Fortnite, but then because of that automated tournament creation, you get to start making partnerships with those titles, and it's maybe a one-off thing, maybe something that you only do so often, and it's but it's so lightweight because of a service like that, and you're maintaining it all within a game, that then you put in your live audience production and you start creating these one-off events. It's like a boxing match.
Yeah.
There's no starter fight, like kind of like UFC does, where there's multiple fights. This is the main event. Everyone's there for that one fight, and that's okay. Everyone's okay with that with boxing. Why can't we get to that point with esports, even where you're doing a variety of games back to back to back, Evo style, but on the same stage instead of separating anything out? So
sure. I mean, I agree. I really enjoy the fact that we see more of these features being handled, being more kind of consistently approached. But in the end, you also have to, I always circle back to that. Like, that is only one piece of the puzzle here. It won't make your game fly that single thing won't make your game esport ready, so to speak. You have to think about everything else too.
Yep.
So I think that's also something I wanted to be here at GDC to kind of listen into. I want to make sure that the developers actually get to know, the full kind of width and scope that you actually have to consider when you're looking at making it competitive gaming part of your content for your game, because it's not a silver bullet.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it will help a lot of developers who doesn't need to put a lot of hours into making those features. So.
And that's kind of interesting from the game development side, is that a lot of games, even in production right now, they're not necessarily focused on esports part of it. They'll make the game that they want to make, and then they'll say, where's the community picking this up at? And then they'll start implementing a lot of those tools, like a good spectator mode, or like automated tournaments, or ways that communities can run their own stuff. But that's almost an afterthought a lot of the time. So it'll be interesting to see more games starting with an esports emphasis, either from the ground up, this is an esports title, or just simultaneously saying our product is going to have esports and we're going to be supporting both products at the same time. I think that's going to be a lot more of the conversation over the next few years, especially as companies like Wargaming or Blizzard start developing their platforms for supporting that within their own games.
Sure. And I think that, like, at least what I could tell about some of the stuff that EA is looking towards, how the way they are kind of starting to move and structuring and looking at esports or competitive gaming. It doesn't have to be esports. It doesn't have to be a sport. It just could be competitive gaming. But they're looking at it in a way that, yes, this is actually adding value for the players in the way that this is actually recurring content. Like, if there is a proper, fair, competitive mode for your game, it should actually serve as, an extension. You don't need to have a story-driven game in order to make, that people enjoy it as content, because actually the competitive side would be the content itself. So,
and I mean, now we're also talking like your game is no longer just an audience for game players.
Yes.
You're looking at people who just want to watch personalities on YouTube or Twitch, and you're just having spectators the entire time, whether it's from a competitive side, an entertainment side, even a comedic side. where someone just has a whole bunch of funny commentary and they're the ones making fun of other people in the game, and you get a laugh out of that. But it's not necessarily just about that competitive or that esports side. It's about players, spectators, and then you have the merging of that together for a huge social event as well.
Exactly.
That is a tremendous amount of work to be taking on, and I appreciate it. I appreciate a lot of the outreach that DreamHack is doing and a lot of the quality that you guys bring to the table, giving esports a great name and a great show for a lot of people's first experiences. So thank you, and thank you for coming to talk with me on the podcast. It was great meeting you. If you find yourself up in Seattle, by all means, hit me up and we'll go. I'll show you the proper breweries. We'll get some good Seattle food.
And the needle. The Space Needle, right?
You say needles and I go, I'm not that
No,
far.
no. The space one.
Yes,
the space one.
The Space Needle. Yes, we can definitely do the Space Needle. And look at that. 45 minutes and you didn't mention the weather once.
That's pretty exciting, actually. That's pretty exciting.
Now, is there any social media, if anyone can ask you questions or reach out to you that you want to broadcast on?
I mean, I'm available at Runquist Pontus, the most easy handle you could ever find.
Okay.
Or just, I think if you just search for DreamHack and Pontus on Twitter, you will find me.
Okay, great. Well, it was great talking to you, and we'll have to talk again some other time.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thanks.